All right, here we are again. The Kelp4less podcast. I don't even know what number it is anymore, but as always, the incredible, undisputed hydro weight champion Harley Smith on the Organic Mechanic with Kelp4less.com. And boy, we got a real good topic to talk about this morning.
Hmm.
We've had a lot of phone calls about foliar application of nutrients or biostimulants compared to root absorption application of nutrients and biostimulants. And there's really not one perfect answer for the situation. But one common ground that we do see with the customers we talk to on the phone is they tend to apply too many foliar applications.
Yeah.
And that's just been our experience. And I think we should address that. The difference between the two, when and how to do it and why. So just maybe a more thorough understanding of why we would foliar and why we wouldn't. Be a great
Hmm.
topic to discuss.
Okay. Well, I'll kick it off here. I think let's start with. I'll just start with the hydroponic part. You know, the most of the nutrients are, especially if they're in water soluble form in hydroponics, root application is more than, I'd say, 95% of what the plant's taken up. You really don't need to foliar unless you have a deficiency. If you see
Hmm.
signs of a nutrient deficiency, like, okay, there's a magnesium deficiency, or I'm seeing an iron deficiency, something, the quickest way to fix it is with a foliar application. Now you can add it at the roots and it will fix it, but it'll take more time. Where if you do a light foliar with the specific mineral that it's deficient in, it's much faster response. So really that's what you're looking at. So for hydroponics, and you know by visual symptoms. Let's say you see if there's a nitrogen deficiency, something like a major nutrient like that, foliar, yeah, okay. But you could do one treatment at the roots with nitrogen, uh, a grow formula or a nitrogen specific formula. The plant will start to respond even at the roots in 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah, rapidly.
They're very rapid, and the symptoms will go away within a few days. Do I need to do a foliar spray of nitrogen? I mean, you could, you'll get a rapid response, but not as important. Now, if it's something like a trace element, like a metal, maybe you had a little problem with the roots, with
Hmm.
maybe you had a little root rot. I hope not. Or maybe you had your pH was out of balance. The plant's not able to take up enough. Foliar spray, obviously, that's the way to go because you're bypassed the roots, whatever the root problem is. But what I would say to a grower is you really need to understand why you're seeing the deficiency. Don't just treat the symptoms all the time, but treat the cause. If it's a pH problem, we'll see if you can solve the pH. And then you won't have the problems. You won't have to treat the symptoms anymore. So that's what I'd suggest for the the hydroponics part with minerals. Just a quicker response with foliar, light dose. And if you do apply it, make sure it's a light dose. You don't want to burn your plants. You can burn your leaves if you spray too high of a concentration. And you don't want to spray it in the heat of the day, obviously.
Hmm.
Well, maybe it's not obvious. Do it with the lights off if you're indoors, or if you're outdoors, apply it first thing in the morning would be my suggestion. When its temperatures are cool, it has all day to absorb, um, and it'll be more effective that way. And of course, add a surfactant, so you don't have drops on the leaf. Then as it dries out, you have this concentrated dots.
Hmm.
I've seen that with iron before. You can literally see brown spots on the leaves
Hmm.
where it was concentrated. But a surfactant, it spreads out in the film. It's more easily just absorbed and it's not as concentrated. So
Hey, and
that would
what's
be my
and what's
input
a
on
good
hydro.
natural surfactant? What's a good natural surfactant? I want to hear it.
You want to hear it from me?
Yeah.
Yucca, yucca,
Oh,
yucca
I should
extracts.
have known.
How did you? I knew I'm glad you asked. There are other surfactants, obviously, but there's some non-ionic surfactants, and they all do the same thing. But
Mhm.
yucca would be my go-to. It's organic, it's biodegradable, it has some other benefits besides just being a surfactant too.
Mhm.
It
Yeah,
helps protect against some molds even and some fungi. Part of the
absolutely.
saponas are part of the plant's natural resistance to fungi. So yeah, there's some side benefits that are positive that you wouldn't have with the non-ionic surfactant.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we talk about with our customers a lot that a plant can only absorb so much nutrient foliar. I mean, it's
Yeah.
a limited amount of foliar, compared to the root zone. So,
Mhm.
it ties in directly with what you were saying. If you can recognize a deficiency, quick correction, a small amount, but you need to really get your water balanced, your nutrient solution balanced, and things like that for a good overall success. Foliar is kind of like a rescue when it comes to nutrients that we believe. So that takes us to some biostimulants. So
Mhm.
we have one biostimulant, our extreme blend, that's very, very popular, foliar. And again, it's just a blend of the amino acids, the organic acids, and the kelp. And we recommend, a weekly foliar of that, a quarter tablespoon per gallon, foliar rate, just as an overall health biostimulant. And the plants do really respond to it, and it helps with the absorption of calcium. That
Right.
product, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
very effective too. Anyway, that's my side of the biostimulant foliar. What have you seen?
Yeah, same thing. One of my very favorite foliar blends is for mother plants. I like to do
Mm,
foliar sprays of moms, of the mothers, because let's talk about, the kelp, for example. The kelp is high, as know, as for sure. However, I'm not saying this for you, I'm saying this for the audience, is high in cytokinins, natural cytokinins.
hmm
And literally, if you spray a foliar spray, the cytokinins will literally pull the nutrients into the tissue. It will pull in some sugars and it'll pull in some the amino acids and the nutrients. Also, the cytokinins literally break the apical dominance, the top growth, but stimulate lateral bud development and the
hmm
branching. And that's what you want for your mother plant. You want those branches are what your cuttings are. So you want to keep your plants a little shorter, a little bushier, and you can encourage some growth. And you want to pull nutrients into those tissues so that there's stored nutrients. When you take the cutting, it has some stored energy to use to make roots. Because you take a cutting, it's separate from the mom. It's separate from the roots. It's not
hmm
getting anything from the roots. So it has to, so do that. The way I look at it is 2 weeks generally before you take the cuttings to do a light mist. That's all you really need. No more than once a week at the most to do it. But even every 2 or 3 weeks, you'll have a noticeable beneficial effect on the mom. So that is a go-to foliar. I call it stage zero of cloning. Before
Absolutely.
you even take the cutting. So that's my main one there. And you could just kelp would be enough for stage zero, and that would because that's the main thing. But again, when you add like your extreme blends, you're having some additional benefits like better uptake of calcium and others. Now that was surprising to me though when you told me about that years ago about using a foliar spray with the biostimulants, improving the uptake of calcium. I always thought of it the other way where we're stimulating root cells to open up calcium ion channels to take it up. I didn't really think of it as a foliar on the leaves that would have an effect on the uptake of calcium. But I've heard this thing not just from you, but I've heard from others that it does improve the uptake of calcium, even though the amino acids don't contain calcium.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. On and staying on this topic, what have you found some absolutely never foliar X, Y, and Z? Um, uh, we get a lot of
Well,
calls, people like, oh my goodness, I sprayed X, Y, Z on my plants and they look terrible. Help, what do I do? What have you seen in your experience?
yeah. Well, I think the worst, I wouldn't say any of them are bad, but there's some you're going to have to be very cautious with, more cautious than others. And one is maybe like mono ammonium phosphate, something like that as a foliar. Be very careful with that because it's so acidic that you can burn them. The other one is you do not, let's say you're using a horticultural oil, an insecticide or something like that for insect, and you don't want to have spray anything with sulfur in it. You don't even really want to do a sulfur burner if you're doing the oils too, because it's very phytotoxic and it almost looks like an insect took a bite out of the leaf. It literally burns sections of the leaves out. So those are two that right off the top of my head, um, be careful with because of the acidity of the one. That's not that you can't use it, but you want to make sure you're balancing your pH a little bit if you do. And again, really light dose. And what about you? Um,
Yeah,
what do you see?
potassium silicate. Potassium
Oh,
silicate seems to be, as you start peeling away the layers of what's going on with a customer over the phone, boy, a lot of issues with people trying to foliar apply potassium silicate. And I just advise them that, that's a no-no. Let's, use your reservoir for that. Have you encountered that situation at all?
uh, not really as far as hurting the plant, but if I'm doing something, if I was going to suggest something, someone was wanted to do something for fungus, then I would add potassium silicate to the mix because I want a pH of about 8.3. But potassium silicate there's only one way to do that. There's other ways to get that pH up there because that slightly alkaline pH is not friendly to fungus. So this makes it harder for the fungus to get established and to spread. So in that case, potassium silicate is as part of a mix. But you could
Hmm.
use a bicarbonate instead, potassium
Hmm.
bicarbonate,
Hmm.
which is pretty common. Um,
Hmm.
Silica
Yep.
isn't very mobile. It's kind of going to go where you put it. It's going to stay there. Uh, but I'm going to kind of switch in the subject here a little bit. Uh,
Yeah.
Sometimes when you're doing a foliar, where it works the best, even like for the mother plant I was talking about, stage 0, use that as a foliar and at the roots.
Hmm.
Do it both ways, even at the same time, because the at the roots is going to improve the uptake of the nutrients, get more root development, better uptake of water and nutrients, the sponge, and then the foliar will pull the nutrients into the tissues. So you get a push from the roots, pull from the tissue. You put the two together, it's going to be more effective. Have a stronger result on the plant. When I went to see the first scientific trials of bloom stimulants
Yeah.
in it was actually in Belgium. Um, they were using it both ways. They were using it at the roots and they were adding it as a foliar spray. And they were seeing when I was there it was already a 10% increase, but by the end of the trial, I read the report, 20% increase in um, in production. And not only the production of the fruit and flowers, but the quality.
Hmm.
It was not just the number of fruits and weight and quality at the end. So that they were doing it both ways. There's foliar and roots, and I normally suggest that
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
and even if you're doing it if you're doing it from a nutrient deficiency or we're treating it, I would still add if I have visual symptoms of a deficiency specific element, I'm going to add 30% more of that element to my feed at the roots.
Mm,
right? Until the symptoms go away, and then add just 15% more, because obviously what I had in my base wasn't enough. And that should
mhm.
do it. But then do the light foliar spray just to do that instant, have an instant response on the plant.
Yeah, we tell our extreme blend users, when you're finished doing that foliar application, just put the leftover in your reservoir and root feed the rest. So we're on the same page there. Yeah, that's good advice. Another foliar application that always leads to problems is again, here we go. We say it all the time, the over applied nitrogen foliar.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah,
just can be deadly.
the
Just
worst.
yeah, can be deadly. And boy, that's it goes back to kind of what you opened with. It's if you can identify that, the root absorption is really the way to go
Uh,
because it is so rapid. Yeah.
I'm laughing because I remember like 20, 25, 30 years ago, a product came out in the hydroponic stores, was introduced. It was called Green Up or something, and it was just ammonium nitrate. It was ammonium nitrate in the bottle. Oh yeah, that'll green them up, yeah, for sure. But it's going to hurt your plants at the same time. We would just laugh about it. No, no, I'm not going to recommend it. Yeah, it'll work. It'll green them up. Yeah, but yeah, they'll
Yeah.
make nice soft rank growth that's going to be subject to even more problems.
Yep. Yep. Be careful with the nitrogen foliars. Yeah.
Yeah, good
Yeah,
one.
that's good. So leading us down that road, we do have a lot of customers that have a standard foliar regimen along with their root feeding regimen, and they're very satisfied with the results. And I think if you do that, number one, like we always say, have a plan, have a plan for it going forward on your schedule, and yeah, if you can work in conjunction both of those things, it can spur some good results. For some experienced growers that achieve their production goals using both methods.
Yeah, and and personally too, I don't recommend spraying anything on flowers. Yeah.
Hmm.
So at that stage, if if it's flowering, I'm not going to do the foliar, but then I
Yeah,
would use it at the roots, for sure. I continue using it
absolutely.
at the roots for a while, and unless it gets to a point where I have evidence that I'm getting too much calcium uptake or something, too much is accumulating, then say, all right, I'm going to cut back at the roots too. They don't need it anymore at this stage of their life. Obviously, it's excessive. But most of the time, I continue to use it at the roots. Why? Because I want actively dividing roots and new root tips all the way to the day of harvest. I
Hmm.
don't want the roots to start dying back at any time. It's from beginning all the way to the end. So have a little bit of root stimulant all the time, but maybe back off on some of the amounts or some of the specific components later on.
Absolutely, absolutely. And uh, on my side of the game with agriculture and big farms and big fields, the foliar applications, it has to be, worst case scenario. It's do or die at this moment. We don't have any other options. We've got to do a foliar application, a spray application, and it's very, very hard and expensive. I think the going rate right now, just for the method of application. So just to um, just to make a pass in your field with the sprayer or the mechanical devices or whatever, just averaged about $15 an acre just for what it takes to
Yeah.
go across the field. That doesn't include product, that doesn't include, any transportation or anything. Just that's the going rate just to put the foliar on. So in agriculture, it has to be a very, very necessary do or die situation. Um, so again, it goes back to the planning with the fertigation and get yourself off to a good start. Let's plan ahead so we don't have those emergencies and to be able to fertigate and irrigate the nutrients we need ahead of time because whew, boy, that can get tough. It's a scary rat race. You're a race against the clock as well. in agriculture. So uh, that's my take on foliars in in agriculture. It can be very disruptive to your crop as well, driving across the field and so on and so forth. So not a very common practice, but it's used if needed.
Yeah, yeah, it's labor. It can be labor intensive. If you only have a few little plants in your home garden,
Mhm.
and you want to do a little, okay, go around, spray, spray, spray. But, um, or of course, if you want to do something you got an insect problem or something, you want to do a natural spray there. You know that kelp, I bet maybe you know this, you know kelp better than anybody, but, that's not bad to add to an insecticidal soap of some kind, a natural thing against insects, because the kelp extracts uh, have abrasive molecules in them that can cause lesions on the bug. And that makes the insecticidal soap more effective because it has more penetrating power because of that. Did you know that?
I absolutely know that, and we have customers that
That's
tell
what I
us that
thought.
all the time. But
Yeah.
we don't recommend that. We can't say that. We can't because as a fertilizer, I mean, we'll get in trouble because it's not an EPA registered pesticide, so you can't say it does anything for. But boy, if you've experienced that and you say it just as a unbiased kelp user, absolutely. We have customers tell us that all the time. And I'm glad you brought that up because, personally, we can't bring that up and we don't bring that up. And as far as some of the agencies that monitor us and, inspect us and do that stuff, yeah, we have to keep a pretty clean slate when it comes to that. So, oh, please tell us more what you've experienced. I mean, yeah, this is a great topic that I would love to do a whole podcast on it, but I don't know anything about that, Harley. But what do you know about it?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I know what you're saying because as soon as you say yeah, it can be used against insects and make your sprays more effective. Now, all of a sudden, just by saying that or putting that on the label, now it's an insecticide. It's a
Hmm.
pesticide. It has to go through all 15 years of trial and make sure that it's safe. You have to prove that it's safe, which is not easy to do.
Hmm.
Where if it, but you know what? I've seen it out there on the market. I mean, I remember there was a Safer's, so just an
Yeah.
insecticidal soap
Yeah.
out there, and they added seaweed to it with
Hmm.
seaweed, So and it was on the label,
Yeah.
but I
But
don't.
they don't claim that's the active ingredient. The active ingredient is something else. It's
And
just
maybe it's when, yeah, maybe it's
yeah.
not the active ingredient either, but it is, and it does make the product more effective. And that's
Hmm.
the way I look at it too, just improves the efficacy. That's all.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
at
And
the same
kelp's the
time,
most Yeah, and kelp's one of the most common foliar sprays anyway. It
that's what I
really
was
is.
saying. I mean, no, you're gonna get the benefits of the kelp and the trace elements too for the plant. And at the same time, it's gonna make your your treatment against the insect just a little bit better. Just a
Hmm.
small improvement. Yeah,
Right.
so I got what you say. We can't say we can't even say what's true if it's involved with a specific product on the
Right.
market because then it's considered labeling.
Hmm.
It's the labeling laws. It's not
Hmm.
the product, it's the label that is the most concerning for some reason in the United States of America. You know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And sometimes you gotta walk a balance because like for us, copper sulfate is a nutrient. Yeah, absolutely. Many of our blends have very, very small amounts, percentage wise in conjunction with what the final mix is.
Mhm.
However, some copper sulfate suppliers, they only sell it as a pesticide, an
Oh,
algaecide, a bactericide, a cleaner. And so we have to be real selective when we get our bulk supplies that it doesn't come labeled as a pesticide. It comes labeled as a nutrient, and it's the exact same product. And so
mhm.
it's a fine line you got to walk down, but it's the same kind of thing. So we can't sell it or advertise it as, you know, a pesticide or a fungicide or an algicide. We can only use it for our nutrient. And so it's kind of, and I understand the concept, but when you're in the business, you have to be aware of those many facets of the labeling. Like you said, it's
Hmm.
all a labeling issue.
Yeah, if that was my job, was just work full time, working with the EPA to try to justify the truth of some organic products, I wouldn't
Yeah.
do it. I mean, you could say, "Hey, I just want you to work with the EPA on being able to add fulvic acid, to approve fulvic acid as a supplement." I would, and I'll triple your salary. I'd say, no, no, thank you. I'd rather go beat my head against the wall than try to argue science with a bureaucrat. I'm not saying they're bad. Really, I'm glad they're there. It helps
Mhm.
protect us, but
Much needed.
I would not want that job. Believe me. I could
Yeah.
tell you some stories at another time, but of there's only a couple of times where I worked with a company in R&D, and they asked me to talk to an EPA guy, and I did, and I liked him. I mean, they were good people, as far as people, but I said, the way you're doing the test isn't really fair. You're not really testing. But they said, oh, they just don't listen. That's it. I mean, this is the way we do it across the board. We're not going to make any exceptions. We're not going to change our processes. You just got to live with it. And we have to
Yeah.
end up changing the label. you know,
Yeah.
so we're in
So,
their guidelines.
so to sum that up, kelp, good. And if you receive additional benefits from it, even better. Whatever those benefits are, absolutely. So,
Yeah,
good. I'm
and
glad you brought that up.
that's a good thing. That when I was working with other companies in the past, they were real careful, conscious of the same thing. So if I was talking about kelp, I'm talking about kelp. I'm not talking about a specific brand of kelp,
Mm-hmm.
because then I'm just talking about the scientific research about kelp and
Mm-hmm.
or about all the different ingredients that are in the products.
Yeah.
And that was safe because hey, it's freedom of speech, and I'm not saying anything really honestly that they could even dispute. you know, I mean, this is just pure, I got this from, the university research, and this, so it's all true, but I'm not saying this will do this in this particular product. So,
Mm-hmm.
way
Yeah.
to go. I understand.
Yeah. And from gardener to gardener, this kind of talk goes on all the time. From farmer to farmer, this goes on all the time. There's so many cultural practices that like raw milk for fungus control. I mean, that's for a lot of people, that's a real, I mean, cultural aspect application that a lot of people believe in and do. And so, I can't argue with that. I mean, if they're, achieving what they want to achieve with that, but to recommend that to somebody, we can't. I can't say anything about it. So gardener to gardener, practices. Yeah, it happens all the time.
Yeah, it is. And remember the Pythagoreans, the followers of Pythagoras,
Yeah.
in
Right.
the past,
Right.
they define truth as that which works. Now, they might not understand why it works. What is it about raw milk that works? Is it the amino acids? Is it the calcium? Is it some, what is it? We don't know. But then as scientists, me, I'm curious. I want to know why. And if I can understand why, then maybe I can make it more effective. Maybe I don't need all the whole milk. I just need that portion of the milk that has the fats, solids, or whatever it is that's working, and use that, and with fewer chances for mold and other negative side effects. But
Mhm.
okay, I think we're
Yeah,
about done here. What do you think?
that was a great discussion. Yeah, that was a great
Yeah,
discussion.
yeah, I think we covered it pretty well. Okay, yeah. Let's
Yeah,
stay tuned for
hopefully.
next week. Keep sending in those questions to Brandon, so we have
Yeah.
some topics to discuss.
Yeah, you bet. I love it. Yeah, keep them coming. And um, we'll do our best to address it. Absolutely. So, yeah, I hope some viewers can pick up some pointers out of this, and because that's what we're trying to do. And your knowledge is greatly appreciated. Thanks for taking the time to do this once again.
Pleasure as always. See you next time.
All right, thanks,
Bye.
buddy. See you.